So, it's Thursday, Graham, and you know what that means.
Is it the Pedestrians Filmcast?
No!
Oh, that's right. It's our new interview series called Up and Coming Soon.
Yeah, Up and Coming Soon. It's a bit like One Up and Coming, which is about games, but this is about film. Up and Coming Soon. Like coming soon.
Mm-hmm. And we couldn't use the One Up because there's no extra lives in film because film is a serious business.
Yeah. So, basically this week we're talking to Andie Bolt. Well, I say this week in this interview. Mm-hmm. Let's not start setting things in stone. Yeah, don't tie me down.
Yeah.
But we're talking to Andie Bolt and the new it's a documentary she's making called Wow Mom. We won't tell you any more than that right now because that's what the interview's for. Mm-hmm. If you do want to support it, then there's a host of things you can do. You can go to Kickstarter and check out the whole Kickstarter campaign, and that's wowmomthemovie.com. There's Facebook. If you want to go like them on Facebook, then it's facebook.com/wowmomthemovie. And if you know anyone that can help in any way whatsoever, so if you know someone in TV, film, music, podcasting, I'm just leaving out all the things that I really want to say here: radio, newspaper, magazine, website. Anyone that's got anything to do that could help promote or push the Kickstarter campaign, then you can email wowmomthemovie@gmail.com.
Okay. And if you want to support us, we have a weekly filmcast, we have a weekly gamecast, we have video content, we have written reviews, and you can find all of these things at www.pedestrians.net. You can subscribe to us on iTunes, Pedestrians. You can go to Twitter at Pedestrians, Facebook /Pedestrians, and Ello.
Yeah, on Ello, we're at Pedestrians on there as well.
Yeah.
So, shall we go into it?
Without further ado.
Yeah, let's go.
We've got two Andies.
I know it's going to get confusing, but let's just try and keep our hats on, you know. So it all starts somewhere, and I think that's probably the best thing to do is just say, how did this all start? What's the origin of Wow Mom the movie?
Sure. So I am Andie Bolt, as you said, and I'm a comic and a filmmaker, and I was working with Nerdist and Chris Hardwick, and he brought me on his podcast, and on the podcast he was asking me what I'm talking about in my stand-up nowadays, and I said, well, I kind of got tired of making jokes about parking or terrible food, and so I started getting really personal, like, I don't handle my mom's cancer well, so I make jokes about that, and she handles her cancer by playing a ton of Warcraft, and he was like, that's crazy, we got to send your mom to BlizzCon. So originally we were just going to do like a one-off video for Nerdist of my mom in cosplay at BlizzCon, but then BlizzCon got pushed that year, and then the following year, my mom was actually like in the hospital, and it was a really depressing moment. Like she'd just been like, Andie, just kill me. I just don't want to fight anymore. It was one of those like, cancer lifetime movie moments. Yeah. And she was just drugged up and really exhausted. I was like, okay, lady, like when you come to, you're going to be happy I didn't kill you. But Hardwick I had missed a call from Hardwick, and his voicemail was basically like, hey, like we're all set to like send your mom to BlizzCon this year. I think there might be more than just a one-off video there. I don't know. What do you think? And I was like, oh man, yeah. And so I started researching it, and then I talked to my mom. I was like, what if we sort of like told your story, but then, we also raised awareness for this really shitty cancer that nobody knows about.
Yeah.
And she got really excited, and we just have been, over the last year and a half, I've interviewed a ton of gamers who use gaming as a way to cope, whether it's, the loss of their son, cancer, dementia, a divorce, or I've also interviewed a lot of comics on, is it okay to joke about cancer? Is it not okay?
Yeah.
Because my mom and I definitely joke a lot about it. Because when you're a comic, it's like kind of frustrating when your family gets sick, because it's like, oh, I wish I was a brilliant scientist and I could solve this, but I can't, so I'm just going to joke about it.
Yeah, it's the only tool you've really got at your disposal is to kind of make fun of it in some way. Like, the one thing I was interested about is, like, when you say you brought it into your comedy, was that something that did it feel natural to do? I mean, were you worried about bringing it in, or do you know what I mean? Were you worried about how people might receive it at all?
Oh man, I was super worried about it. Only because, well, like my grandmother died of cancer, and before my mom got cancer, if you even said the C word around the family, like everybody's in tears, everybody's falling apart, you know? Yeah. And it's just like this word has so much power, and I hate that. I hate that it's got this like awful stigma, and it's got so much power over us. We can't even talk about it. And my mom was like not talking, she was not going to therapy, and she wasn't talking about it with us. And I was like, lady, you got to talk about this cancer, because if I'm not handling it well, you're not handling it well. Yeah. And I didn't realize she was developing all these relationships in the game of friends she was talking to about it. But when it came to the comedy, I went kind of night by night. Like my stand-up is very much like, I do kind of like stand-up jazz, where I've got bits and I've got a whole bunch of different jokes, but I always do them in a different order. And I really sort of feel out the room. So at the top of the show, like I didn't know how to enter it either, and I bombed a lot trying to get this stuff to work. Yeah. So I have a lot of failures, because also I can only tell the jokes when I'm having like a good day about her cancer. Like if I'm obviously in a non-happy place, like the audience is like, ooh, this is sad.
It gets too real for people, and they're like, I'm not paying to be depressed by someone, you know?
Exactly. And I get, I started getting reactions after shows of either other comics who were on the bill or people in the audience being like, hey, like my mom had cancer. This was so great. We used to laugh and joke about it all the time. And then that same show where a woman told me that, a guy came up to me afterwards and was like, my mom died of cancer, and I think what you just did was really disrespectful. Yeah. And I was like, I'm sorry that you feel that way, but also like, fuck it, I'm happy that I've got material that's making people feel stuff. Yeah. But yeah, so it's something that's definitely like, I know that comedy is a place where people usually like to go and be entertained and not think about the heavy stuff. But I think it's just I just can't anymore. I can't pretend like all this heavy stuff's not happening. And it gets ridiculous, and there are ridiculous things about cancer that I like to joke about. So one intro that I tried the other night that seemed to go well is I was like, so my mom has AIDS. I'm just kidding. She has cancer. But isn't that so much better than AIDS? Yeah. And at theaters like at UCB, where it's a little more alt crowd, like the audience is more expecting the unexpected. But like I can't really do that joke like in my hometown with a bunch of right wing people. So it's like you have to know your audience a little bit. But we did a cancer benefit that we film in the movie because an item on my mom's bucket list was to do stand-up comedy. And we had a whole bunch of cancer patients there, a whole bunch of people from the hospital. And Hardwick was actually, I was like, Hardwick, you can headline. He's like, no way am I following the cancer patient. So he opened for my mom, and like, my tumor jokes and my cancer jokes crushed in that audience. Yeah,
I guess it's that thing where people are almost they just want someone to break the ice. I guess. I mean, I'm not the expert on it, but it sort of feels like in any situation, if you've got a group of people who are suffering from something, like any way that helps them deal with it in a sort of community way all together, they're all in on this, and it's like not a private joke, but sometimes I feel like when people can kind of relate to each other, it makes it easier to broach these topics. So, it seems like a pretty cool environment to reach out in that way with comedy.
Sure.
Especially with someone who's suffering as well.
Yeah, like I'm sure you guys have noticed this, but like funerals are some of the funniest places, right? Like people, it's the easiest audience. Like everybody's so ready to laugh. Mm-hmm. So,
well, they want to, don't they? They want to break that kind of stoic, horrible, just like morbid silence, Yeah.
Oh yeah, man. At the family therapy at the hospital, where there's other carcinoid patients and their loved ones, like I'd crush with that crowd. Yeah. A lot of crowd work there. It's a good self-esteem booster for me. Yeah. But I definitely find that to be true. Because it's all super relatable. Oh, what was I just gonna say? One of my favorite interviews in the documentary, and I'm now really good friends with this guy. We like talk every day. Yeah. He's in Denmark and he plays a game called World of Tanks.
Okay, I know the game. Yeah.
Yeah, Wargaming, wargaming.net. They've got a lot of games that people over on that part of the world are really into. And this guy in particular, he's 50. And when I interviewed him, he had 4 weeks to live. That's what he was told.
Yeah.
And he is so funny. It's like one of the funniest interviews, and I'm like crying the whole time I'm interviewing him, but I'm also like dying laughing because everything he's saying, I'm like imagining my mom saying it because he's talking about how like this is how people in the game have helped him, and like these are the relationships he had, and he can't tell his wife this stuff. He feels better telling, and I'm just like, oh, like I'm relating to it so much, but I'm also dying laughing. The guy is going to be like the Yoda of my movie, and he's still alive. Like that guy doesn't have a stomach. He just started like his 6th round of chemo, and he's just like so hilarious, you know.
So is it the same? Is it the same form? Is it the neuroendocrine tumor?
No, he's got good old fashioned stomach cancer. He doesn't have NET. He's got stomach cancer, but he like the whole wargaming community, he went onto his forum and was like, hey, I'm on hospice, signing off. And then all these people from around the world made a video, and they were like, hey, let's send JD off with a bang. Let's throw this big tournament. So they threw this big tournament. And then Wargaming made a medal that you can earn in his honor.
Oh, pretty sweet.
And of course, he's like, yeah, I bet Wargaming thought they were going to announce that medal at my funeral, but I'm alive.
Yeah, I'm still going. Like, I'm sticking it to him.
Yeah.
It's good to... Sorry, on you go.
Oh no, like he's just so great, and what's interesting is that like he and I joke about it all the time, and he's got a great sense of humor. But like his opinion on if people can joke about it or not, he's like, I don't want to hear people who aren't my friends joke about my cancer, you know? He's like, or people who don't know me well enough. I'm like, screw that guy. So I feel like it's really conditional based, you know? It's like it's a person to person, case by case kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. I think that could be said about absolutely anything. So it just sort of fits into the general rule of like, you know, you can't walk up to some fat guy in the street and say, hey, you going, you fat bastard. Yeah. But like if you know someone and they're your friend, you can go and do that. Well, provided that's what they're cool with that. But do you know what I mean? It's like it's that sort of, it's just a personal relationship thing and what you know you can do with someone, I guess.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and you know, like I've gone through different stages of my comedy. Like I started my first open mic, I was 14. And I used to keep my comedy super clean. You know, I liked Seinfeld and I liked Cosby. And I stayed really clean until right about the time I started really having sex. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then you were just like, let's get filthy on this now. Let's fucking do this.
Well, I was an adult. I wanted to use my adult words. And I wanted to talk about my adult experiences. And so I've gone through different stages of like being super clean, not being super clean. And like if you play it safe, right, you could still be really funny. Like there's a lot of great comics who are super funny. They don't talk about anything that's super personal. It's very surfacey. And there are people who like that comedy. But even when I do that, I'm going to offend somebody. Like if there's somebody who wants to be offended, they're going to find something to be offended about.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was like, oh, like even when I play it safe, these same a-holes are offended. So why not just tell the jokes I want to do, talk about the stuff that I want to talk about. And I find it as a challenge. Like joking about my mom's cancer is a challenge, and I'd rather be doing something that I feel like I'm challenging, I'm learning, I'm growing, than do the same jokes every night that are just, you know, vanilla cancer, you know.
So we looked at some of your videos online, and a lot of your humor is kind of close to the bone. Like I really liked the Battered Housewife cookery show. What kind of...
Okay, what was that? What was that again?
The Battered Wife cookery show?
Oh, yes. Battered Wife cooking show.
Where does your comedy come from? Like, who are your influences?
Well, my comedy comes from my tears. No. Comedic influences, I feel like, you know, I get influenced by a lot of people. And, you know, all-time favorites is like Steve Martin and Gilda Radner. And like Robin Williams, man. Definitely like just brave, daring people who like just, you know, will break their backs for comedy.
Yeah.
But also one thing that's really exciting about having moved to LA when I was 17 and being in sort of like the, you know, the alt scene, you see people just try out, you know, crazy stuff. And like, so there's a lot of comics that nobody knows that are just like, I see them and I'm like, ugh, I wish I was that brilliant. And nobody knows who they are, you know? but they're just daring and they're trying stuff that people haven't tried. And that battered housewife character, I did Matt Besser asked me to do a showcase for Lorne Michaels. This was a few years ago. They were scouting SNL talent, and Besser got to pick 10 comics at the theater, and he asked me to be one of them, and I was really excited. And we only got to do 2 characters. And I was trying to decide, like, do I play it safe? I've got a lot of characters I could do that are just like, they're funny and they're safe. But I had this battered housewife character that I thought was hilarious. And I was like, screw it, I'll try it. And it was it was a show at UCB, and it was packed to the gills. And I didn't get SNL.
You're like, what went wrong? Why didn't you pick me?
Guys, I was younger, but no, I just felt like there's this thing, like, if I'm going to fail, I want to fail doing something that I really like and respect, instead of playing it safe. Because if I hadn't done that character and I still didn't get SNL, it'd be like, oh man, then you have that, like, what if I'd actually done this?
I should have tried it.
Yeah.
Should have tried it, yeah. And that's something that sort of I kind of hold on to. And that's like you guys at the top of this call, like you were asking me, so what's Road to Azeroth? What's Wow Mom? Like, are they the same movie? And like our title originally was Road to Azeroth. That was actually something Hardwick pitched. And I did really like the title. It is a nice title. But I don't know what Azeroth is, Like, I
You're like, what is this?
I know now, but Azeroth was very much like gamers would understand what that is. Oh, not even all gamers, but like, WoW players. And I really my movie has, you guys probably hear about this a lot, but like when you go to make a documentary, you start out making one movie and then it ends up becoming something else. And then you're in post and you can basically cut 9 different movies if you wanted to.
Yeah, for sure.
But the movie that I really want to make is a movie that is like a story about a mother and daughter's relationship. And cancer and Warcraft and all that stuff is sort of the background. And we have all these other interviews and all these other characters that are supporting it. But really what's at the root of it is this relationship. And I think that everyone has a mom, and that's a more relatable title.
Yeah.
And gamers will still understand what WoW means. Like, gamers are like, oh, Warcraft. And people who don't are just like, is this girl obsessed with her mom? She thinks her mom's WoW? I don't know. Who knows what people are going to think. But it was one of those things where I was like, this is an indie project. I'm not making any money on this. I'm only losing tons of money and time. And it's like, I have to stick to my guns and do what I think is right. And Hardwick is just like, hey, it's your movie. Go do what you want to do.
Yeah.
That's Andy has a massive broner for Chris Hardwick, so I think he's pretty jealous of your relationship with him.
Who doesn't have a boner?
Just a little bit, yeah.
But one thing that I would it's kind of embarrassing for you, but and Mum, you spelled mum incorrectly. It should be M-U-M. I don't know. I mean, maybe you want to clear that up. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but,
just.
You weirdo foreners.
Yeah, I mean, we only invented the language. Don't worry too much about it. It's fine. Well, actually, I don't know where you're coming from, Graham. You're a Scot. Well, one thing I was going to ask is, and it's just now we're laughing. It seems like it's out of place. But when you were filming the whole thing, and as you were kind of documenting stuff, did you find that it was something that was it hard to document something whilst you were also living it? Do you know what I mean? Or did it help? Or
so hard?
Yeah,
like this is by far the hardest thing I've ever done, guys. Like, I don't recommend it. I don't recommend putting a camera in front of your dad and then asking him how he feels about death. Like, don't do it. It's not fun. It really was one of those things where it's it's just so fucking hard. Like, even like this part is like, and another reason I have an interview after this with a site that they cover crowdfunding campaigns.
Yeah.
And a big thing about doing crowdfunding campaign is everybody's like, oh, you gotta have all that prep. You gotta have all that prep time. You gotta you make your money in the prep and you do all this stuff. And I was like, I didn't have time to do all that kind of stuff because I'm dealing with people who are dying. Like, that guy with stomach cancer, like, makes me cry like every 5 days.
Yeah. You know, just like, listen, man, like, I've got to cut this off because I've got to go and make some money.
Yeah. And one person who I interviewed for the film passed away, and their family has since, requested that I don't have her in the film, which is, I totally respect that, because it's like they don't want this to be like the last thing she was in. But it's just it's been just the hardest thing ever. And then so that's why like making the film, I think, is going to have to be a part of the film because it is so much a part of it.
Yeah. It's a part of the whole experience is making it and living it as well.
Yeah. I mean, because honestly, I wouldn't be having to do a crowdfunding campaign if I was willing to give up Final Cut or not donate any of the revenue to cancer.
Yeah.
There was a company who like really wanted to come on and fund it and sell it because I think people just see the trailer and they're like, everyone in the industry who's watched it, which has been a really nice compliment, has been like, this is an Academy Award winning story. Like this is this is an Oscar doc. And I'm like, I don't care about that shit. I just want as many people as possible to see the movie so they know what NET is. And I want to finish a movie that my family can be proud of and everybody who I've interviewed in it be happy to be a part of it. Telling their very intimate stories.
Yeah.
So it's just difficult because, for as much as I love this industry, I also hate it. And I've just had to really stick to my guns and be like, everybody's like, this is your first film. You don't get Final Cut. Like, you're not Spielberg. And I'm like, yeah, but this isn't a $300 million movie,
Yeah, it shouldn't be that hard to get done.
Yeah, this isn't something that's going to break a studio's back. So I've had to really fight for these things, which is, proceeds from the film, like have to benefit cancer in some way, very specifically NET. Like it can't be some rando, just cancer in general. It's got to go to NET. And then I have to have Final Cut because I actually have footage of my mom's surgery. Like I literally have my mother portraying all of her insides in this film.
Oh.
And I have to like protect it. I feel like if there's one project I'm going to be like, this is my baby, it's this one. It's not like one of my sketches of like a battered housewife cooking show or something.
Yeah, it's not something that's throwaway at all in any respect.
Yeah. It's something where it's like, these people are trusting that I will do a good job telling their stories. Like one father, his son died from brain tumors, and his make-a-wish was to visit Blizzard, and the Blizzard company put him in the Warcraft game, and you can actually play his quest. Oh, nice. It's really cool, and his son died about 6 years ago, and I was interviewing his dad, and he was shaking, and so I turned the cameras off, and I was like, hey, like, you just seem a little nervous, and he's like, when my son died, it got a lot of press because of the whole Warcraft in being in the game and stuff. And he's like, I didn't say the right things. I made my son seem like a different person than he was. And I just feel like if I'm going to tell this story, I want to make sure that I do it right. And I was like, hey, man, I feel the same pressure. I'm making a movie about my mom. I think I jumped into this like really excited because, I had just seen her on a hospital bed saying she wanted me to take her life. And then all of a sudden she was like, oh, you mean I can have cancer for nothing? And we can actually tell my story and help other people? Like that's worth fighting for. That's worth putting up with all these experimental drugs and stuff for. So I just told him, I was like, look, like we'll do this as many times as you want. I'll send you a cut. And if you don't like it, I will come back and we will reshoot it. And, we will do it until you're happy with it. So it's like, I can't involve, studios or different companies who don't give a shit about that part. Like they just want a movie that's going to like make money or get the Oscar nom or whatever they want. Yeah. And so for as much as I've been excited that people have been interested, this is one of those projects that kind of needs to truly stay independent because I'm making all these promises that if I attach other companies, I won't be able to keep,
Yeah, and I think you then feel the weight of there's that weight of responsibility on telling the right story and making sure you represent everything the way people want it to be represented. I don't envy that. I wouldn't envy your position anyway, do you know what I mean? But like it just seems like such a huge task and such a, like in many ways, not horrible, but like such an awful thing if it goes wrong. Do you know what I mean? I can understand why you wouldn't want to relinquish control over it.
This is your directorial debut. How have you found it?
I'm sorry?
This is your debut as a director. How have you found the process?
Well, it's like I've directed shorts and like web videos, but this is so different because it really is, you kind of have to have a vision. Not kind of, like you definitely do. Yeah. But like you really have to like sort of stick to your guns a little bit because especially for this kind of thing, I I have 150 hours of footage, and you can make whatever movie you want to make in post. And last winter, we had a bunch of footage, and we wanted to submit for this Tribeca grant, and you have to submit basically an extended trailer, 10 minutes of footage. And my DP, who I've now made a producer on the project, Will Reese, he's amazing, great editor. He edited together this 10-minute layout of footage, and I was like, okay, I don't want to send this in. And he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, you're making a different movie than I'm making.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, this is what the movie is. I was like, no, it's not. And then we got in a weird fight. And it was our first weird fight, and brought us closer together. But it's you kind of have to be strong about your things, and and I was like, we don't know what this movie is going to be until we get in post and we lay out all the puzzle pieces and we keep rearranging them and try them different. And I want that to be a part of this process. So I was just but I can't have this be my movie. I can't have this is what's out there. And then he just respected that. And his input I value more than anyone else's, because he's been there for every single interview and his third eye is so interesting. When I'm interviewing my sister, and she's so mad at me because she thinks I'm making this movie for my own personal gains. And I was like, I'm sleeping on couches and I'm broke as shit because I bought $15,000 worth of hard drives. I promise it's not about that. So I'm having this emotional conversation with my sister, and I think my sister's pissed at me. And then I'm driving home, and my DP's like, oh, your sister feels like she's not doing enough for your mom. And I was like, what are you talking about? And that's totally, then later my sister and I had a discussion, and it's it's all these weird emotions. Cancer affects people in a crazy way, and the whole family gets cancer, and everybody, comes together in a weird way. But it's been so nice to have his third eye. So for as much as I'm directing this project, and I am, what I really realize a big part of the process is the people that you're working on it with you're only as good as the people you're surrounding yourself with.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think with when it comes to a documentary as well, I think a lot of the directing, because with a film, you're trying to get the performance that you envision. I think with a documentary, the difference would be that you're directing more through the editing and through how you're using the footage you've shot. So I think there's such different styles of directing.
Oh yeah, there's so many times where you're like, oh, I wish we had gotten that shot and we didn't get it. Or I remember one time Will was like, hey, we need to have your mom say this again. And I was like, we didn't get it. I'm not going to ask her to recreate anything because she's the worst actor in the world. Yeah,
it just doesn't work that way.
One, she's the worst. And two, I hate those projects. I hate it when you can tell they've just asked somebody to redo it. And I was just like, if we don't have it, we don't have it. And that's what this movie is. I sat down with a bunch of friends of mine who make documentaries, took them to coffee when I started making this project, just hey, what's your advice? And they're always, everything they said was true, which is it's going to take you 3 times as long as you thought it was. Yeah. And you just have to be okay with it not being what you think it's going to be. Anything you think it's going to happen, just be okay with that's not going to happen. And they're right,
So a lot of it comes down to just acceptance as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of documentaries yourself?
I am. I do love myself a good documentary.
Nice.
How about you guys?
I'm a massive fan of Broomfield. He's the guy who made the documentary about Eileen Wuornos.
Oh,
Nick Broomfield.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's done. He's another Brit, but I really love the way he makes documentaries. I love the way he's a very different sort of filmmaker in that he's obviously a big part of his films, but he's so cold almost. You can feel this kind of coldness. He's so separated from whatever the subject is that you can't. Sometimes you're like, Jesus Christ, but he really sells. He really tells the story that's really there because he's not invested in it. He can do it so objectively, but
do you think that's a problem for yourself?
That. Oh, huge problem, guys. Huge problem. Yeah. My therapist should get producer credit on this film because I got to tell you, we've been watching the footage back, with my editor, and we're pulling selects and stuff. And there are just times I blacked out. I'm interviewing someone and I emotionally, my brain forgot it like, I was like, I didn't say that. And there's footage of me asking someone these questions, and my brain shut down.
Yeah.
Like, especially that interview with Micah about his son, Ezra, like, my brain just shut down. He's, like, reading me a poem of that he wrote about the moment his son died, because he's a poet. No. And I don't remember it, and I... like,
your brain just went like, this is fucking too much, I can't deal with this.
Yeah, it got too personal, it got too close. My therapist says that I'm what's called an empath, which is I'm way too empathetic. Like, I'm one of those people that could never be a therapist, because if somebody was telling me about how hard their life is, I'd be like, oh my God.
Like, oh, just come and hug. I'll give you a hug. I'll pat you on the back. Have some cookies.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I think it's why I'm a good actor and a good comic, guys, but I'm a little bit of an emotional director. Definitely. My sister, who is a battalion chief, she's a firefighter.
Oh, wow.
You know, she's so good at compartmentalizing. Like, she can pull a family off the freeway who just got in a terrible accident and then, like, go home to her son and be fine. And separate the two. And I'm just like, I can't do that, you know? I think that's why I'm such an artist, guy.
It seems like your family is comprised of total badasses in some way, you know. Like, it seems like you're all quite robust, it would seem, in your own ways.
I love the name. It's like your mum's name, Terry Bolt. She sounds like a kind of like a character from a Raymond Chandler novel. You know, like one of these kind of detectives.
Oh yeah,
Terry Bolt.
Uh-huh.
It's just I don't know. It's just that when you say that, I mean, like, it seems like you've all chosen very well, especially you and your sister. Like, your sister does this crazy saving people job. Do you know what I mean? And then you've gone a completely different route, but to as much of a degree, you know.
Oh yeah, she's a hoss. We definitely have, like, the same complaints about being females in our industries. Like, everything she complains about, I'm just like, yeah, it's like that, only without fire.
It's like,
movies,
yeah, I get
with web content, you know. I definitely would love to make a documentary about her and about women in fire, because it's a whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
But my dad's name is Red Bolt, so I named my company after my father. I'm like making a movie about my mom, but my company's named after my dad.
Yeah, I saw that. I think you might have said that in one of the emails before we were doing the interview about that, and I just sort of checked and I was like, I see what she's done there. It's great.
So is that the direction you're going to go in from now on? Are you a documentary maker? Is that what we can call you now?
I already shot the sizzle for my next documentary that we're shopping. And I have like 5 documentaries that I'm like, I have to make these. I still, you know, like, I don't know if you guys watched any of my Red Baroness Warrior Single Lady stuff, which is scripted comedy where I'm basically playing a funny version of Red Sonja.
Okay.
It's very nerdy. It's like, I say it's like the Mindy Project or New Girl meets Game of Thrones. I don't know if you guys watch those shows. Probably not. I don't know.
Yeah, well, there's a bit of an anti-Game of Thrones sentiment at the moment. I don't know if it's in the US as well, but in Europe, the more people I speak to, the more people are sort of not rallying against it, but they're very kind of, we're not sure at the moment.
Yeah, well, it's basically like a comedy series that's about, you know, that's set in that Game of Thrones type world. So it's like, I still want to do that stuff. I still want to act. I still want to do, you know, stand up. But I have to make these movies. Like, I was making this movie and knocking out my mom's bucket list. You know, I was like, Mom, like, we're going to make a movie. Like, let's do that bucket list. And I was like, I've always wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. Why have I never really done that? So my documentary that I shot the sizzle for already is about women in baseball. Okay. And I went and I tried out for the major leagues in June, which Major League Baseball is something Americans care about. I don't know if you guys have heard of this thing.
No, but, we've heard of it. We just call it rounders.
Cricket.
Yeah. Well, no, that's just a really boring version of any sport. Cricket's awful. No one likes cricket. Not even cricket players like cricket.
It's a game that lasts for like 4 days, isn't it? This baseball thing.
Yeah. I read about that. But basically, like, you know, there's no women in baseball, and there's no reason for there not to be.
Yeah.
It's really a boys' club, and like, I went to the open baseball tryouts, and I was the only girl out of 475 dudes. And there's women who've been drafted, and nobody talks about it. Like the White Sox, which is a pro team, they had a girl on the team drafted in the 90s.
Oh wow.
And it's like, I feel like women in baseball in America is very much a metaphor for women in our society in America.
Yeah.
So I want to approach it the same way I sort of approach this, which is through the point of view of like comedy. Like I'm kind of saying that like I want to basically be like a Morgan Spurlock, but like female and funny.
Yeah.
Because like he's really interesting and funny on his own, but he's not like a comic who like knows jokes and like bits, you know.
Yeah. But it's not his whole shtick. He's just trying to get across in a slightly humorous way.
Yeah. So it's like
Cynical,
I really want to make a doc where it's like you see me doing jokes about being a female ball player, and then you know you see me trying out. But then I'm going to interview like women who should be playing, and then also like all these major leaguers. Like, why the hell haven't you put a girl on your team?
Yeah, kind of just put. It's that thing where you almost relish the point where you can put someone on the spot as well. With questions like that, and then just watch them sort of go, oh well.
Yeah, my sister got to throw out the first pitch at a Giants game this season, and we got to go do fantasy batting practice, which is where you get to like bat on the field before the game. It was amazing. It was epic. It was the greatest day of my life. And I got to meet Tito Fuentes, who is a Hall of Fame baseball player.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, what do you think about, like, why don't you think there's any women in baseball? And he goes, women, you don't need to be in baseball. That's why they serve food here. That's why they have office jobs.
Oh, you're like...
And I was like, whoa, Tito. And I look at the people who represented the Giants who were there. And I was like, whoa, did you guys hear what that guy just said? They're like, he puts his foot in his mouth a lot. And it's just like, I respected him for saying that because it's what he truly believes and he doesn't apologize for it.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, at least you're being honest. So that's a documentary I really want to make because it hits a lot of the issues about inequality, and like I'm very much a feminist, you know, and so I could do that in a funny, entertaining way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So bring it a bit of a. Like so, at the minute, I think, as you will probably know, there's like gaming seems to be surrounded by the shadow of Gamergate, and I think that's something that. I mean, me, myself, and Graham are sort of. We've tried to. We don't really want to be involved in any of it because it just seems to be a complete shit fuck. To be honest, I don't know another way to say it. And it's but like it would be nice to see people challenge, you know, sort of coming at the subject of of feminism and
absolutely
and coming at it from a way that's not already shrouded with sort of weird kind of little boys in their bedrooms and angry you've got like these angry gamers and angry women and there's two sides that just aren't going to win and it's just like we need to go back to the start and do this all over again. So I think anything that's going to represent feminism in a way that it hasn't already got this this sort of complete nemesis is already dragged right now.
Yeah, it's like, man, we interviewed Alison Hayslip yesterday because even though I've got pretty much the movie in the can, I'm still picking up interviews. Yeah. Like she's somebody I've been trying to schedule an interview with. The schedule wasn't working out, so I finally got to interview her yesterday. And she and I sort of had this conversation because like we're both feminists and we both like, I love playing baseball and I love playing basketball, but I also love video games and I love comic books. Like I can like the things that I like, you know? And like she was talking about how she just, she always really loved video games, and she sort of stumbled into this role of being like the go-to gamer girl for a while when she was hosting G4 and stuff. And she's like, it's really interesting because for as much as like we're feminists and we support other women, there's also like women who aren't helping us out. You know what I mean? There's like women who are like, oh, you guys are also not helping the problem. Because like I've also seen women like post about like, I hate all these women who are feminists. Like you're just like anti-feminist women. They're being anti-feminist by calling themselves feminists. I don't know. It's kind of complicated, but it's like they think that they're trying to help the problem when really they're like, shitting on other women. I'm like, like it's just, I don't know. It's really complicated. It's a weird, complicated time, but I definitely feel like it's for instance, okay, this is different a little, but when I was in London in May. And I was actually trying to get up to interview JD in Denmark. My friend was directing some commercials in London, and he was like, for my donation to your film, I'll pay for your flight out here, and you can stay with me. And then JD was like, I'll fly you to Denmark so you can do this interview on me. Okay. And then the night before I was supposed to interview JD, he slips into a coma. Ooh. And totally, was a downer on my trip because he'll listen to this. So screw you, JD. And your coma. No, I'm kidding. I love you. Stop it having comas. Okay. So while I was in London, I ended up killing a bunch of time because I was hoping he was going to wake up from his coma. So I was spending some time by myself, hanging out in pubs, looking around. And we were having dinner with these British dudes. And I was like, I'm not saying that I'm a 10, but I'm a solid 7 or 8. Why has no one hit on me? Literally not one. Come on now. And this British guy goes, oh, well, you're not going to have all these ideas and you're American, you're going to push all these salts on me and ugh, I just don't want to deal with it. And I was like, oh, fuck you.
You're you just ruined the illusion that I thought everyone was actually quite nice, Yeah. Turns out you're just a jerk in a different way.
Yeah. And I was like, that's so funny that he was, viewing American women this way. And I was like, well, good, whatever. I don't want to date a ninny.
Yeah, if there's one thing that Brits are good at, it's seeming to be a lot nicer than they really are.
Being passive aggressive.
Yeah, passive aggressive is one thing we're really good at as well. You get that sort of all right, mate. Yeah.
I ended up hanging out with these guys who were in their late 50s and 60s who they were having an argument about DC versus Marvel.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, nerds. And they're like, whoa, who are you calling nerds? And I was like, I'm making a movie about Warcraft. We're cool. Chill out. And I ended up hanging out with these older dudes a couple times while I was there. And they were all super cool and chill and just not giving a shit. But it is just sort of a weird. They were like, oh, you like video games, you like comic books, and I'm like, yeah, you can be a girl and like that stuff, and people don't have to be an asshole to you. I don't know.
Yeah, it's when people are surprised. It's sort of I don't want to be angry at people when they're surprised because it's their natural reaction, and you're like, oh, you're not trying to do anything bad, but it's that thing where it just kind of exposes. A sort of a preconception that people have got in society, and you're like, oh, really? Is that still happening?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I got in an argument with my roommate recently. He's a big gamer, big supporter of my movie, big fan of mine, really nice guy. But then we were having this feminist conversation, and he's like, I don't know, I'm kind of not on board with all this feminist crap. It's I get it, but you guys are practically equals, you are. And I was like, boo, I gotta move. I think I have to move, right? I think I have to. And so we sort of had a conversation. It's a lot of people are just uninformed. A lot of people just don't know, I for this baseball documentary, for instance, I went to a couple baseball games and I just interviewed a whole bunch of people who were there at the games. And I just asked a lot of women, why don't you think there's women in baseball? And they'd be like, oh, because women aren't strong enough, or because women can't hit home runs, or because, And I was like, well, how strong do you have to be to throw it from second base to first base or second base to home? Because in half the league, you don't even have to bat. I'm like, oh, that's a really good point. And I'm like, well, did you know that there were baseball players, a female pitcher struck out Babe Ruth, and then 3 days later, baseball said women are unfit to play baseball, and her contract was terminated. Yeah. I was like, did you know about that? And it's just a lack of information, I think.
So
and I think it's the same thing with all this Gamergate crap.
Yeah. Is there not a female baseball league? Because in football we have a female football league?
Yeah, there's not. So baseball is... they have a U.S. women's national team, and my argument is I want to wrangle all those girls and have them go try out for the men's league, because since it's not a contact sport, there's no reason why women shouldn't be playing alongside men.
Yeah, I've always wondered that as well. There's certain sports, for instance. I'm super into motorcycle racing. I fucking love it, and I've only ever seen 2 or 3 female racers. And there's that part of me that thinks, there's absolutely no reason that there shouldn't be more females in this sport, because, first of all, it's got nothing to do with actual physical strength. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
You're not against each other where someone would have an unfair advantage.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no, in fact, you would almost say that women with a smaller frame would have an unfair advantage, but yet no one's taking advantage of that. No team is going, let's start training up girls and getting them into the sport, because do you know what I mean? It's you sort of think, why isn't this happening?
When I was in like elementary school, I was obsessed with motocross.
Yeah.
And there was this Disney film that came out called Moto Crossed, and it was a made-for-television movie about a girl who like shaves her head, and her name I think was Andie too, and she shaves her head and she like goes and competes and she's like winning, and they're like, oh my god, it's a girl, you know, because they wouldn't let her race because she was a girl.
Yeah, they're like, you can't race being a woman.
Yeah, and I loved that movie.
Well, I actually grew up with my dad motocrossed when I was a kid, and there were two girls that raced at the same time, and it was always but the thing was, it was the opposite. It was like they made such a big deal out of it that it was like you were like, can't you just let them just race and just be like everyone else? Because they would have like, you know, top woman finishing, and you'd be like, what? Why are you doing that? Like, this makes no sense.
Yeah.
Like the reason one thing I really want to dive into is like that our society is set up in such that there aren't women who are like, yeah, I'm just going to go race. Because, for instance, like when I was in third grade and we had to write what we wanted to be when we grew up, I said, I want to be a Major League Baseball player. And with my millions of dollars, I want to make Academy Award-winning films that I get to act in, right? Yeah. I was done in like 2 seconds. I was like, I know what I want to do. And my teacher, who was a woman, she had me rewrite it because she said that both of those were not real jobs. They were not actually goals that I could achieve. And she's like, because there aren't women in baseball, women can't play baseball. And I didn't like, you know, I'm in third grade. Like, I thought that was so weird, but I'm like, oh, it's my assignment, I'll redo it. So I rewrote it, and I said I want to be a lawyer, and I'm going to make millions of dollars. And with those millions of dollars, I'm going to make a movie about how I'm a Major League Baseball player and win Academy Awards. And so I was like, I'm gonna get there somehow.
You're like, fuck you, teacher.
Yeah, I really want to interview her too, because she's still like a friend of the family's.
Okay. I feel bad for saying that.
And just while I was making my mom's, you know, documentary, my mom has, you know, once she got cancer, she's like, she'll say shit now. You know, she taught school for a long time, so she never cursed, and she's like, who cares? I have cancer. I can do what I want. And she has been writing since I was a kid, and she never put any of her writing out there because she was afraid people wouldn't like it or it was bad or whatever. And she wrote this amazing young adult novel, which is a prize you can win on our Kickstarter, that is about this little girl who travels to another world and is trying to get home. It's an adventure. It's a really, really good novel. And I was like, how come you feel comfortable putting it out there now? And she's like, well, because now if people don't like it or it doesn't do well, I don't care. I'm going to be dead soon. And I was like, God, what a great, why don't I have that perspective now, like before I have cancer? Yeah. And so I had heard a few years ago that the Major League tryouts were open. And I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to go. And you know what? I was better than a lot of people who were there. And this is another reason, like, I really like CrossFit. You guys do CrossFit over there? You guys got CrossFit in Germany?
What is it? I don't know. I've got no idea. Oh, CrossFit.
Yeah.
I think I know what it is, but I'm going to let you go ahead and explain, because I don't want to make a twat of myself.
Well, it's basically, you know, there are CrossFit gyms. It's a type of workout, but it's become a competitive international sport. And what it is it's a mixture of like sports training, Olympic lifting, and gymnastics. And the thing that I love about it is that regular women who never even thought about doing a pull-up are now doing pull-ups and climbing ropes, and they're super strong. And then all these really strong women who are like really amazing weightlifters are like being revered and are getting sponsorships. And, you know, so it's like, you can say that women aren't strong enough to like play baseball, but I know for a fact that like there's plenty of women that can outlift, you know, Ichiro or like these really tiny baseball players.
Yeah, or me even.
Yeah, or you. But it's just so exciting that like something's coming around that's empowering women, that like, hey, it's not a sad thing to be strong. Yeah. Don't be embarrassed about the fact that, you know, you're good at something. And I feel like if our society was set up to where when girls are younger and they say, I want to be a Major League Baseball player, they say, I want to be a motocross racer, they say this stuff, that instead of the people, the environment they're in saying, no, don't do that. Instead of that, if they said, yeah,
go for it.
Yeah, then it would be a different world, you know.
It comes back to that same thing, though. Again, I mean, I feel like every debate I've had, or kind of, you know, when I have a conversation that goes in this sort of direction, it always ends up with me saying it all comes back to education, you know. Like, and I think it's so true though, because if you educate people, I mean, like I remember teachers from school who said certain things to me that they thought were probably throwaway statements that literally changed the course of my life, you know, for good and for bad. And you know, and I hate and love those teachers respectively. And it's like if there was someone there that would just, you know, give it to you the way it is and say that a girl comes and says, I want to, you know, I want to be the CEO of a motocross racing team. You know what I mean, or whatever, and they go, "That's great, go do it." You know, of course you can do that. Why wouldn't you be able to do that? Yeah. You know, or just anything. It's just so annoying.
I think it's insane that my third grade teacher said, you can be anything you want to be. You can be president of the United States. And I was like, I want to be a Major League ball player and I want to win Academy Award winning.
No. I didn't mean get silly.
Yeah. She's like, that's crazy. For the other job, I have to be born in America, 35, and it only comes around once every 4 years. So it's like, that's crazy. To me, that's what's crazy. But this is another reason why I love documentary films, and it's really exciting to be in this space now, because films have the ability to change the way the world looks at things. Yeah. If you make a really powerful film, I mean, look at Super Size Me. Every fast food restaurant has to have the calories next to the food now in America.
Yeah, it did really change things.
Same here as well.
Yeah, same in Europe, yeah.
And you could argue that it was because of that film. Now, I'm not saying it was just because of that film, but that film started the conversation and forced people to change, you know, forced people to, like, these companies to own up to stuff. And I think, you know, I would love to be a part of filmmaking that's like that. Like, these two girls who are helping me produce this film, they are also producers on a documentary called Out and Around, which is a documentary about this gay couple that travels around the world talking to other gay people. Like, what's it like to be out and gay in Rwanda? What is it like to be out and gay in all these other places? And it's really fascinating. And I've seen some of it, and it, like, gives me chills, you know, because I think God, it must be hard to be gay in Texas, but, like, that's nothing compared to some of these, like, third world countries.
Yeah.
So it's really, you know, and they're excited about telling stories that are, and this is why I brought them on board for this project, and they're so passionate about it. Because, you know, we all want to make stuff that is about stuff that we really care about, but then is also good so people get the message. Like, my movie is going to have a lot of laughs in it, because I don't want people, you know, I'm not going to feed it to you heavy-handed. Like, you're gonna learn about net carcinoids, but I'm not going to bang it over your head, you know?
Does it have a title yet? Does it have a name?
Which one? My baseball one?
Yeah.
Oh, it's tentatively titled Batshit Crazy.
I like that.
Thank you.
How many guys have said to you in the making of it that the reason that there are not many female baseball players is because girls throw like girls? How many times has that been
a thing?
It's definitely been a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how many times. But
enough that you would forget how many times.
Sure. What I did is the guy who was my DP when I went to the tryouts, we were interviewing a bunch of the people who were there at the tryouts, and I did some interviews where I was asking the questions, and then I was like, you know what, why don't you go around and get some interviews without me there? And when all of a sudden there's not a woman asking the question on the other side of the camera, what was coming out of their mouths was a lot less.
Yeah. Yeah, you know? Very different.
And I was there was like all these young guys being like, hey, like, we have a black president. People said that would never happen. I think that we're in a time of change, you know, like, hey, I know a lot of girls who are better at baseball than I am, you know, but then as soon as I'm not there, they're just like, no, bottom line, I don't want to watch a girl play baseball, you know, and it was just like, hey.
Yeah.
It's like that scene in Anchorman where Brick's talking about how their periods attract bears.
Yeah.
Remember they're bringing the women into the newsroom?
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, and you just like, why is this a thing? You know, like, why is this okay?
Crazy. It's so crazy because, like, even it was just in 1960 when a woman finally ran a marathon, But doctors literally in the 60s said women should not be allowed to run marathons because their uterus will fall out.
Oh my God.
Like, that was documented, doctors saying that's why women, like the first woman to run a marathon, her name was Terry, I believe, actually, and she signed up like as a boy. Like, she had her boyfriend sign her in.
Okay.
And her name is like this unisex name, and she starts running the marathon, and the guy who put the marathon together, like, there's photos of this, like, is shoving her out of the line, being like, get out of the race, get out of the race.
Yeah, you might, yeah.
And she's like, from there, she's like, it was so painful, but I had to finish the race because if I didn't finish, they'd be like, that's why women can't race, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it became very important that she did this right because she was like the first one.
Yeah. And, you know, I would love to think that, you know, I'm an equal in this industry, but like the fact that I'm a woman comes into play a lot, you know? I do sometimes spell my name with a Y. Just when I'm like writing stuff and people aren't going to know, like if I'm submitting like a writing submission, because then you're not already reading it as a filter of like, oh, this was written from a girl's point of view. Yeah. I recently wrote this series for Univision, and it's a comedy series about surfer dudes, and we went to the read through, and the cast was like, oh, we totally thought this was written by dudes. And I was like, nope, it was written by me and my gay writing partner. And they're like, no way, you know? And that was something that's like, I kind of like feel like I'm wearing that like a badge a little bit, because it's like, yeah, see, it was just good writing. Yeah. Like, it's just good writing. It's not because it's good for a girl or whatever, you know? It's nice to just make good movies, do good work, and have it not be a fucking thing. Yeah. Like so many shows have one female writer on their show because they have to. Yeah. Because the network's like, oh, you have to have a girl. Because the manager for the Cardinals, which is a baseball team, when he was asked last year, hey, would you ever put a girl on your team? He said no, because I think it'll really upset the dynamic in the locker room. Uh-huh. And that was in 2014 is what he said. And it's like, there's been gay baseball players. Yeah, and,
so where's the issue?
Mm-hmm. And it's like, what's the point? And that's another reason I want to make this, is because it's just such a metaphor, because you could change locker room out for writer's room, the board room, you know, whatever. Like, it's going to mess up the dynamic, you know? Yeah. And it's like, okay, for some reason our society, because Americans love their baseball, man, and our society's like, it's okay for women to not be equals over here, but like everywhere else, like, oh, get us in the White House. And it's like, yeah, but this thing that like we take our kids to teach them, you know, lessons in teamwork and all that shit at a young age, like, you know, anyway.
It's okay to not do it there though.
Yeah. And I mean, I have this conversation with female comics all the time. Like when I first started at the Groundlings when I was 17, I showed up to class and I was wearing a dress, and my teacher was like, do not wear a dress when you're improvising. You're just limiting yourself. And that turned into me slowly never wearing a dress or makeup or, you know, wearing my hair back. Like, I was trying to erase the fact that I was a woman on stage because I wanted people to think I was funny, you know, and laugh at what I'm saying or doing. Yeah. And it's like, now, like, I'll do a show in heels and a skirt, and there's this group of women in LA. Like, we're all really kind of frustrated that still there's women on improv teams that get put up on stage, and it's like there's the token girl here and there, and this whole group of women did an improv show recently called Naked Improv Jam. And some of them were like fully naked, some of them were like in bikinis, because it's like, hey, if you're saying that we are just as funny as our tits, like, well, then we'll put our tits out, you know? So it's a little, I feel like the good thing is people are talking about it now. Like, for years, I felt like I couldn't talk about the fact that I felt like my career would be in a completely different place if I wasn't a woman. Yeah. So it's nice to have other women talking about it. It's like, okay, good. So I'm not the only one who feels this.
It was interesting that it was Hilary Swank, was it yesterday or the day before? She said that male actors get 10 times more money than female actors in Hollywood at the moment. Yep. And just to hear that, like, and you're like, so contemporary.
Yeah, how is that still a
I
thing?
don't last week I was teaching a feminist class at university here, and Like, I was showing them this statistic. It's, I think, in America and all the different states, women were making 80 cents on the dollar and 75 cents on the dollar compared to the man. And I was just saying to the girls, why are you not on the streets? Like, why are people not angry about this?
Yeah.
Can you imagine if this was black people or Scottish people or something?
But by the same token, like, why aren't me and you out on the streets as well? I think there's a sort. I think sometimes there becomes like people become sort of complacent and comfortable, and don't you know what I mean? People get into that zone where they're like, oh, I don't want to rock the boat, and do you know what I mean?
I've literally been told by my lawyers, like, yeah, don't rock the boat because nobody's going to hire the woman who's the complainer.
Yeah.
I was having this conversation this morning. This buddy of mine is like being screwed on this thing, and I'm just like, hey man, you can have a contract and you can have all the details, but that doesn't. You're still going into a relationship with someone. You need to trust them as people because you will get screwed. Like, getting screwed is just a part of the business. Once you accept that, then you're like, okay, great. Like, now we can just solve the problem somehow. But I was having this conversation with a girl who hosts gamer type content, and she's always going out for a job where it's like one girl and then like one dude. And I said, did you have in your contract that you have to make equal pay? And she's like, well, no. And I was like, you gotta do that. And she's like, no, I trust them. Like, they wouldn't do that. I was like, I guarantee you he's making more money than you.
Yeah.
And she's like, that's impossible. And like, the guy is like a guy who hosts a lot of stuff. And I was like, there's no way that guy's not making more than what you just said. Like, you should go back and say something. And ultimately she decided she didn't want to say anything because she was afraid she'd lose her job, because the truth of the matter is that they'll be like, look, we'll get 10 more other hot girls in here who will do it for cheaper.
Yeah.
So do it or get it on.
Yeah,
you know?
they know they can do that. It's I mean, it's not just something that, I mean, this is a sort of, it comes down to exploitation, and it's very general, and that I mean, that happens across the world, across the sexes, across the races, to different people in different trades. I mean, to really come to the other end of the spectrum. If you happen to work, for instance, in I was going to say gastronomy, but that would be a German word. If you work in the service industry, for instance, then you find, you know, like, because there are just so many people that just need a job if they're at university or college. You know, these people know that they can just take people on, they can pay them shit wages, they can fuck them around, and if they complain, they just get rid of them and they get anyone else in. You know, and it's just degrees of that throughout the spectrum. It's shit. Like But I think the cool thing is now, when it comes to the issues, the bigger issues like feminism, is that I think the media, the way the media is structured now, is breaking down, and it's becoming like, you know, like now we're seeing, like, you know, like podcasts and independent magazines online, and all of these things are now starting to flood the media market, and kind of, you know, you've got all these independent voices that aren't willing to take shit, or they're not willing to be, you know, like under the thumb of some kind of corporate sponsor, and they're just putting their thing out there. And I think that's what's cool, because now, you know, people can have a voice, and they are out there saying, no, actually, no, I don't agree with that, and I'm just going to say it because now I'm, you know, there's no consequence anymore. And I think that's a really cool thing, you know, like I really think that's how it's going. So I hope I'm right.
Yeah, you know, it's like the more of that, the better. And, you know, I keep getting airtake because people are like, well, then just don't work with that company anymore. And I'm like, but I want to make my stuff. I want to I want to do my thing. And it's like, like this movie, for instance, has been super hard because I'm doing it very independently. Like, Nerdist is supporting me in a sense that they're like supporting, you know.
Yeah.
But I want to make this film like my film, and they respect that and they get that. But it's so much harder because I could have brought on, you know, we talked to one gaming sponsor, and it's like, yeah, but I don't want this movie to be a commercial. You know, I don't want this to turn into a clouded message. You know, I want people to know that it's really like, this movie is what the message of this movie is, what it is, and it's not influenced by me trying to get you to go buy something. And that's harder. It's much, much harder to do it that way. But I have to only hope that it'll pay off, so that in the future I have more of an opportunity to do what you guys are talking about, which is go make, you know, stuff kind of like myself. The problem is that I want to make movies that people see and have a lot of quality to them, and that just costs money, you know. I was just saying that I was just going to come onto the Kickstarter real quick, because
I wanted to say then, when it comes to that, you've got the breakdown of of sort of what levels you can get to, how they translate into what the end product will be, and I mean, as you look through, I think even someone who doesn't have a clue about film can start to understand and appreciate how much this shit costs to get done. Yeah. You know what I mean? And the different stages of how films are made, and, you know, why this film looks better than this one, or why this documentary looks better than this one, because, you know, this one's got great motion graphics, it's got a great score, you know, and these are all things that people sort of think, oh, you know, it's just the icing on the cake. But it's so much more, because if you've got a really good score, it's like you've got like you're intravenous straight into someone's emotions. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Like, that is something I've been arguing about for months, talking to people. They're like, why do you need a budget for like a good score? And I'm just like, man. Because even like, that was something that even Seth MacFarlane really stuck to his guns about when he was making Family Guy. He was like, I have to have an orchestra because it's going to make it that, like, he really stuck to his guns about that. And like, that show is so much better because of that. And that's a comedy animated series, you know?
I never, until you said that, then I was like, there is an orchestra playing in the background on that, isn't there? There really is.
And what annoys me about like Netflix, for example, is when you're like binge watching Family Guy, when you go into the next episode, it just cuts the music completely.
It does, yeah.
And it does it with like, all shows, and it's kind of like, that's a bit disrespectful.
I do like that bit of the show.
You like that, yeah?
Yeah. But the that's the thing to say with music. It's like I always say to people, go look on YouTube and go and look for the throne room scene out of Star Wars without the music over it, for instance. And it's the best example of how music can really affect a scene. It just adds so much more to something, you know. And it's important. It's a part of a film that needs to be there.
It's a character itself, you know. It's like, it's a leading character that you have to like. We actually had a guy who is a composer who worked on The Hobbit reach out recently. Yeah. And he was like, hey, I just saw your Kickstarter. This is the kind of project I want to be working on. Like, can we meet and talk about it or whatever? And I was like, hey, man, like, awesome. That's great. And he's used to working with Howard Shore, who has like these huge, you know, huge, and we have, you know, so it's just going to depend on how much money I can raise, because it'll depend on like, you know, how many. I'm definitely going to have some music scored. So how many minutes can I actually afford? Yeah. There's also like orchestras in Germany actually that will do it for cheaper, and my composer here can conduct them via Skype.
Wow.
You know, it's like you can get really creative. So I'm just like, let me see how much money I can raise, and that's going to sort of determine how creative I get. Because there's also a lot of people who want to help me out. Just because they love the project, which is great. But also, it's like, once you're relying on people's favors, then you're working with their timeline. Again, if this project wasn't dealing with people who are terminally ill, I would be more than happy to wait and do it that way. But I was talking to Hardwick about this, because I was like, releasing this movie as a movie where my mom is still alive at the end, or where she is dead at the end, those are two different movies, and I would rather make the first option. Yeah. And I don't want to be in the post room, you know, with the second option. So I would like to get this thing done. Yeah, get it. And he said, he said once he had his father on his podcast, and he's like, if I had known my dad was going to die, like, that would have been a different podcast, you know, because his father died unexpectedly, like, last year.
I remember the episode where he sort of where he almost just sort of dropped it, you know, without any. Yeah. It was. I remember sort of thinking, you know, it was like, oh, that's awful, you know, like, yeah.
And it's funny because when we first interviewed him, and I was, you know, and even when I was first on his podcast, I was talking about that. He sort of said the same thing we were talking about earlier, which is like, people come because it's comedy, like, they don't want to hear about like all this really heavy stuff. You know, it's too heavy. And he was like, it's really amazing that you're doing jokes about your mom's cancer, because I don't think I could do something like that. Then cut to, you know, after his father dies, when he did our cancer benefit, the guy had so many dead jokes, you know, and it was so funny. And his, you know, his like character in the film, I guess you could say, totally pulled like a 180 of just like, wow, like, that's all I want to joke about is like the shit that matters, you know? Because then it's our job to make that stuff that is heavy. It's not like us not talking about it doesn't make it not exist, but us actually making it a little lighter, you know?
Well, that's the other thing is that I think there was something in the Kickstarter text. there was a little section that was going on about because people don't talk about it. I think like the comedy might sort of help people to feel that it isn't such a taboo anymore. You know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that even not having. I mean, I'm not someone that's ever had to deal with cancer in any way. But like I've had to, we've all had to deal with our own problems in different ways. And I think as soon as you understand that it's okay to talk or joke or discuss or whatever, then suddenly you're like, oh, thank God, now I can express all of these feelings I've got. I don't have to hold. You know what I mean? It's such. You just sort of think, oh, this is. It's just it's a great thing, and I think, or I sort of hope that maybe that's. Just even if it's just a tiny step, maybe it's a step in that direction, you know?
Yeah, see, my original title that I wanted, which I realize is not the best, is World of War Cancer, because I wanted to have cancer in the title, but I realized, I don't want to scare people away.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that the word is scary. People wouldn't go see that movie. And I think that when we say, oh, it's the C word, or oh, it's this, and we handle it like we're holding an egg, it's
yeah.
A lot of the patients I've talked to are like, I can't talk about my cancer. I can't say that I have cancer because it's like handing someone a bad day, you know? And I realized that with my mom wasn't talking about it with people. And, because she wasn't doing traditional chemo, so she didn't like lose her hair. So she just lost a ton of weight and was like so tiny. And people were like, hey, like you've lost a lot of weight. And she's like, I've just been working out, eating right, whatever. And I'm like, Mom, like these are your friends. These are people who care about you. Like, why don't you just tell them,
yeah.
And she's like, because like, I don't want to be like a burden to them. I don't want to bring them down. And if our media didn't make cancer out to be the most terrifying thing ever, then maybe we could talk about it. And if my mom, the more people who learn about NET, the less people who get misdiagnosed, or at least know how to look for it or whatever. So like, we should be talking about it,
Yeah, for sure.
And so if people come out of this movie with their loved ones being like, hey, if you want to talk about your cancer, like we can talk about it, or I'm listening, like that would be a huge win for me.
It's almost, it's just one of those things as well. I think sometimes people don't want to say anything because there's almost like that instant pity, syndrome, where someone say, "Oh, I've got cancer," and someone will go, "Oh, I'm really sorry." That's
you can't have a normal conversation.
Yeah, suddenly everybody is on eggshells, and you're like, "Oh, this. I wish I hadn't have said anything now." Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Well, one thing my mom said about gaming, which is great, is you can do it two ways. You can talk to people about stuff that's going on, but they're further away, and you never met them in person, and there's like this wall of the internet. But also there's something to being able to play games and people not know that you're sick at all, and they don't treat you differently, and they're not pitying you. They're just mad that you have lag and you're ruining the raid. Is
that something that like again, like when someone has a problem and they can't really speak to the nearest and dearest, like is that something that you sort of. Do you find that hard to accept, or are you just happy that she has people that she can and does speak to?
It's tough. My dad and my mom are both retired, and they live on this ranch, and they don't have neighbors for 3 miles. And I didn't realize my mom gets treated here in LA, so she comes down for her treatments and she stays with me, and we go to the hospital, and the stuff that she was saying, I learn all this stuff because I'm in the room with her, Yeah. And I didn't realize until making this movie that she wasn't talking to my father about it at all. Like when she comes home, he says, how'd it go? She goes, oh, it went great. And I was like, did you tell him that they think they found more tumors in your lungs? Like, did you tell him about that stuff? She's like, no, because if it does, he'll just worry,
Yeah.
And I'm like, what must it be like to be sitting there next to your husband every night and not talk about this thing that I know you are stressed out about. I know you're worried about. And that was just so hard to hear. And then interviewing people who are doing the same thing, it was hard to hear other people say it, because I'm like, oh, like my mom probably feels that way, you know?
Yeah.
It's just tough. And for my sisters, I was like, well, like when mom says this, and they're like, no, mom doesn't ever say that kind of stuff to us, ever, And and it made them feel a little bad, you know, that why doesn't she feel like she can talk about that stuff with me, you know? And
has it changed your relationship?
Oh, absolutely. Like, not only has the cancer changed the relationship, but then making this movie has completely changed our relationship. Yeah. Like, she and I were best friends all through high school. And then she was mad that I didn't take my softball scholarships, and I moved to LA to be a comic instead. And
you guys are like the most American family of all time.
Yeah. Where is your home? Just out of interest, where is it that you grew up?
I grew up in the Kern River Valley. So in the state of California, there is like the Sierra Nevada mountain range, and we have a ranch that's right at the bottom of that. So we're like 4 hours outside of LA.
Okay, so it was just you were referring a lot to like hometown, and I was just like. I was trying to ask you before, but I didn't want to kind of kill your flow.
Oh, hey, don't kill my flow, man.
Yeah, sorry, man. I didn't want to.
No, I'm kidding. No, it's very like my parents when they met, they were like, "Let's move to Alaska," and they're in the middle of nowhere. And then their first year of marriage, they got pregnant with my oldest sister. And my mom was like, "I don't want my kids to be a weirdo, so let's stay close to society." So school was like, you know, a 30-minute drive, and yeah, I grew up without like electricity. Like we have a generator, so when the generator's on, we have electricity. So we have running water. We have running water, guys. Yeah. I actually really loved it. My mom's always ready for the apocalypse, you know.
That's what I was going to say. It's like the best excuse to have everything ready for the apocalypse, you know.
Yeah.
And no one looks at you weird because you're like, well, I've got to have a generator. There's no electricity here, man. Like I've got to have all this canned food.
Yeah. I'm actually really excited. I'm starting a podcast called Bunker Buddies, and it's all about like apocalypse and like prepping and all that stuff because I really love that stuff.
Yeah, it's like I wish I could go to university and just like if that was a degree that you could do was like zombie survivalism or whatever you would call it. I would be on that like.
It'd be amazing.
Like I don't know what something on something else.
Carbonate, perhaps.
Yeah.
How old are you guys?
I'm 35.
And I'm 32.
Okay.
Yeah, Graham's a wee boy.
Mm-hmm.
I just turned 30, guys. So.
How was it? Was it hard for you or?
You know, I didn't really have time. It was November 1st, so I didn't celebrate because.
So you're a newbie. You're a fresh 30-something.
Brand new 30. My gyno said, "Hey, this is a few months ago. She's like, you're turning 30 this year, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Are you on any antidepressants?"
What?
I was like, "No." And she's like, "Well, you know, you're 30, you're not married, and you don't have kids, and every girl thinks that it's not going to be hard for them, but." Take it from me. It's going to be hard for you. It's going to be hard for you.
So that was nice for you then. So that sort of really gave you a boost.
Well, and then my mother, like the last New Year's or last Christmas Eve, she was in the hospital and she was a little drugged up coming out of the surgery she just had, and my sisters were at home with their. Sorry, my dog is whining.
That's okay. I was listening with intrigue as to what might be happening.
What's the name of the dog?
Her name's Muppet. She looks like a Ewok. So I would have named her Wicket, but my sister already has a dog named Wicket. So she's like in this hospital bed. She's just coming out of this surgery, and my dad hates hospitals. And then my sisters were, you know, with their families. It was Christmas Eve. They had kids, and kids can't be in the cancer center anyway. Okay. So I'm there with her at the hospital, and she goes, "Andie, come here." You know, and I like lean in, and she's like, "If I could, I'd have your eggs frozen for Christmas." I was like, "What?" I was like, "Just because you have cancer does not mean you can be rude, lady. Like, I'm 30, I'm not 60. Come on." But
nice.
It's not. I don't think it's that bad actually. I didn't meet my girlfriend until I was 30. I was at that point. I think it was like 6 or 7 months after I turned 30. And I just kind of forgotten that I was getting old, you know. And then one day I was like, "Shit, I'm like, you know, I'm 30. That's I need to knuckle down." Mm-hmm. It didn't work. It didn't work at all. But then
so now we're making podcasts.
Yeah. But then this German girl blindsided me one day, and then that was that. But yeah, that didn't happen until I was 30.
There was a great story on the Onion on my Facebook today, and it was women instantly goes from worrying that she can't handle having babies to worrying that she won't be able to have babies.
Yeah.
And I think that is such a thing in life that you just get to a stage where you're like, fuck.
Yeah.
And your whole
That's what I hear. Like, my girlfriends are like, one of these days it's just going to hit you in the face. And I was like, nope, right now they seem like something I will probably accidentally kill. Like, babies, so much responsibility. Like, my sister's kids, I'm like, oof. They don't even, like, when they're infants, my sisters were like, you don't have to hold them. I was like, thank you.
Yeah, thank God for that.
Oh my God, thank you. And then as soon as they start throwing fits, you know, it's like, well, bye.
You just hand them back with that sort of like...
Dating while making this movie has been so hard. I'm like not emotionally available for anyone because I've been so emotionally drained from everything else.
You've just been crying so much.
Well, you know, but it's also just like their shit doesn't seem important to me, and then I like have no empathy left for them.
Yeah,
like I was dating.
I think that's at least you've recognised that, and are just like, okay, so I'm unavailable right now. That's just the way it's going to be because I can't give you what you're probably going to need.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Like this one guy I was dating, it was really fun. It was super nice, but like this was like in the thick of filming the project, and he was like, oh, I got another parking ticket. And I was like, well, you know, that happens. And he's like, God, it's like you make me feel like the woman in this relationship because I feel like you're never emotionally available for me. And I was like, I'm not. Like, I really don't care. Nobody's going to die from that parking ticket. Like, I'm very much like, we could all die tomorrow. You know, I get a cough and I'm like, what is that? Like, so it's been a process. But man, it's also, for as much as this industry can be really hard and there are like, you know, the women being treated poorly and there's terrible contracts and it is what it is. It's also that making this, I've had so many people volunteer and like people who I never thought would want to be a part of this project reaching out, wanting to be a part of it, you know, and like, for instance, my DP Will, like he's basically been working on this project as long as I have and he's not making anything, you know, and he's put in so much time. And he knows way too much about me personally. He signed that NDA. And it's like, you know, I was like, man, like, I'm so grateful for you sticking this project out. And he's like, Andie, this is the best thing I've ever worked on. Of course, you know? And we were getting ready to do this Kickstarter and, you know, the team who's been helping me make this project, I'm like, guys, like, we're going to have to do a Kickstarter. You know, and I'm going to need your help. And they're all just like, let's do it. Yeah. We got it. And you know, even when I'm paying people don't act like that. You know, I've worked on a lot of crap that people don't care about.
But that's the thing. Money is often not a good incentive for people to do good work.
No, especially creative work.
Yeah, definitely not. Yeah. I worked on a film where we basically had to stay awake for 72 hours whilst we filmed this film, and almost the entire crew had to stay awake for the full 72 hours whilst we basically had to shoot, edit, and screen a 72-minute feature in 72 hours. And and no one was getting paid, and everyone put in their best work. If people would have been getting paid, there would have been that whole thing of like, I'm not getting paid for this kind of stress, you know?
Yeah,
but that didn't happen because there was no money involved.
Yeah.
So speaking of your Kickstarter, it's just it's almost halfway at the moment. You've still got, is it 22 days?
22 days.
22 days. Yeah, I mean, I was just looking there before we started. It was on 19 and a half. Okay. Which is, I think...
Almost halfway.
Almost halfway to the third. But that's anyone that's listening, that's no reason to not go and pledge.
Yeah.
So, don't
do that whole, like, oh, other people are doing it, so I don't need to. Like, you should just go do it anyway.
Yeah, go do it and don't wait. Like, everybody's like, oh, don't worry. You're going to raise all your money in your last 3 days. I guess that's when everybody, like, decides to go and donate.
Yeah.
It's kind of like eBay when you're bidding on something.
Yeah.
I'm just like super stressed out right now. I'm just like people who do Kickstarters like, Andie, you're fine. Don't worry about it. I was like, no, I'm worried.
Yeah, it's like, but why aren't people pledging now? Why do they think it's okay to wait?
Everybody's loves our video and they love our story. They're like, oh my God, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And so I think they're not donating because they're like, oh, you're going to be fine.
I think that's the trouble. Is like my personal message to anyone listening is, don't think that. Just go do what you think you need to do. Go
pledge
and pledge
early and pledge often.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then go and tell your friends as well, and threaten them physically. So if you don't pledge, then bad things are going to happen. You know, I know where you live, sort of thing. You know, things like that.
Yeah.
But you know, what I wanted to say is, do you want to just sort of? I wanted to give you the opportunity, like, kind of at the end, to just kind of do like a little bit, because this is essentially for you to push the project and the Kickstarter and stuff. And it'd be just cool if you want to just kind of round up and just say your thing and just sort of your rallying call to everyone.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, go for it, man. This is your time.
Yeah. I mean, thanks for bringing me on, because I am really trying to get the word out that like literally every dollar matters. And we've gotten a lot of like dollar donations, which I know are a lot of my poor comedian friends, which I really appreciate. But like, if you want to come and donate money, like, please do, and share it. Like, people knowing about neuroendocrines is so important. So share. And we have amazing prizes. Like literally, we have some of the best prizes I've ever seen on a Kickstarter. And I'm not just saying it because it's mine. But the holidays are approaching. You can get great gifts for people. And literally, it's like, if there is a corner to have been cut up to this point, I have done it. Like, I feel like people see that, like, I need $45,000. Like, that is not a lot of money to make a 90-minute movie. And anything that I can do to make this movie, I have done, and I'm willing to do more, and I'm working really, really hard, and everybody who's going to be a part of this project is a part of the movie. And I really think that it's going to be a super relatable topic. Oh, I'm so bad at this, guys. I'm really bad.
No, it's great. I think you're doing good. I'm just listening along, thinking, I'm feeling.
So terrible.
How much money do I have? Yeah. Andy's desperate to get the Chris Hardwick pledge. For the big one. Was it the 150? No, I think it's only 1,500 or something.
Yeah, for the Hardwick thing, I know.
Would Andy get to touch him?
It's not that bad. I'm not that. It's like I just think what he's doing is great. That's all.
Yeah, Andy, if you buy that perk, then you can stay with me.
If the thing is, right, if I could afford to buy that perk, my life would be immeasurably better than it is now anyway. You know what I mean? But
there should be a pledge, like Chris Hardwick will stroke Andy's beard if he pledges.
if I pledge, yeah. Oh man. So,
but yeah, it's definitely like please, we really do need your support. Yeah.
So just go and pledge. I'm going to run down the little. Basically, if you raise 45,000, that'll get the rough cut out there. Then for 75,000 is the final cut, which is just polishing the. It's if you've got a lamp and you want to sell it, you'll polish that up, and that's exactly what they'll do with the film. Is they'll just put that sheen on it that makes it look really kind of nice, and that's
Charlie Sheen.
No, I don't think. Well, maybe. Who knows? Maybe.
Hey, if we get Charlie Sheen in this, you know what I mean? Whatever's going to get me that.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also like, we are obviously hitting a lot of video game themes and topics, and there's a lot of animated sequences that I would love to do, or like some certain gaming graphics that I would love to utilize, but all that stuff costs more money. So, yeah.
So
sorry, go ahead.
That's I was going to say you've got the 100Ks for adding the live score, which we talked about with getting an orchestra in there, getting a real nice sound to it, the motion graphics, and then I think one of the most important things, the marketing and press, the promotion, and actually like kind of once the film's done, for them to be able to get that out there and kind of push that and get it into festivals and get it into all sorts of different things, that costs money as well. It takes people time. So.
I think one of the good things about this film is that you've got such a passionate community in the World of Warcraft community, and I think they're really going to push you over the edge when it comes to the marketing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, it's no reason for people not to pledge.
Yeah.
And then sort of lastly, I'm just going to run down. If you want to go check out the Kickstarter, it's wowmomthemovie.com. The Facebook site, again, it's facebook.com/wowmomthemovie. And if you know anyone that can help out in any way, so if you know someone in TV and newspapers and radios, magazines, blogs, whatever, anything like that, if you know anyone that you think can help, then wowmomthemovie@gmail.com. Get them to email there and sort of let them know what you can do.
And just to kind of specify, that's the bastardized American version of mom, M-O-M.
Yeah, and not the M-U-M.
Yeah, we should have also bought the mom domain.
Yeah, just to placate all these
I've
Brits.
Really enjoyed talking to you, Andy, because I'm a big fan of Parks and Recreation, and I remember you from the Partridge episode, and
Yeah.
you said that what's the name of the golfer that you said was from Partridge?
Lee Jensen.
Yeah, and I believed you, and I looked it up, and he wasn't from there, and I was really disappointed. So you lied to me through Parks and Recreation.
So you've waited this long to be able to pull her up on that?
I was like, one day I'm going to meet that woman, I'll speak to that woman, and I'll pull her up about that.
This guy.
You are a
guy
psychopath.
Correction and
Dear God. So I think that about brings us to I think that's sort of we can wrap it up. But there's one tagline. There's the hashtag that goes along with the whole thing.
accept this quest.
Accept this quest.
Exactly. Please accept our quest. We want to finish this movie.